Welcome all. Hope you had a nice weekend. Coleman Report Live, May 26, 2020. Lance Sexton, Katie Watucky. Lance, what's going on?
Bobby, it was a great weekend, and there was some information that came out from SBA between Friday afternoon and today, and I didn't spend much time digesting it until early this morning, Bob. I spent the weekend fishing for bass with my brother.
Nice. I know we're going to go through the details. Let me ask the big picture questions first. What is the trap for the lender to receive a letter from SBA saying, hey, your guarantee is being denied? Write us a check on the PPP loans.
I think the only thing, of course, there wouldn't have to be a check written, but a lender would end up with a loan on their books at 1% that has an astronomical payment that the borrower probably couldn't make. I think the biggest issue that I'm seeing in the interim final rules that are being issued is eligibility. If a loan is determined to be ineligible, then forgiveness would not be given. Additionally, SBA's indicated in one of the interim final rules that was issued that the processing fee would not be paid on a loan that's determined to be ineligible. Now, that's kind of difficult, Bob, because throughout this process, we've been told we could rely on the borrower's certification.
Correct.
So it's going to be interesting to see how this works, Bob, but I think the big...
Yeah, look, what, if I'm a lender, that's obviously the elephant in the room. What sort of, I read nonprofits are eligible, employees with companies with less than 500 employees are eligible. Give me some examples of an ineligible loan that SBA would be the lender up with.
Well, I think, Bob, most of these are going to fall in that $2 million and up category where SBA is going to review those more tightly. I'm going to be honest with you, that safe harbor that we had in one of the interim final rules talking about the certification that the business was eligible, it was impacted by the pandemic, where they said anybody under $2 million, you can assume that they met that qualification. So and again, guys, you have to realize, Bob, Katie, and I, sometimes we have to just project what SBA is trying to say. But I think, Bob, the ones that are most at risk are the ones over $2 million. I think the smaller stuff, I think that safe harbor that says check the box and you're good, I think the smaller stuff is not. Now, SBA and the interim final rules we looked at that came out over the weekend, it did say they could review any PPP loan at any time. But there's no way, Bob, they could ever, and Katie, I don't know how you feel about this, there are so many PPP loans, there's no way they could review. They're going to have that $2 million watermark. If I'm a participant or if I'm a lender, I'm going to look at those loans a little more closely now, even though they're already on the books, and just make sure that your information is shored up. But I think that's where the issue will fall, the $2 million and up.
Right. I think also, so I think really the 2 million and up are going to be the big ones, but also any that are showing any sign of some kind of fraud, that's what they're going to pull. So if there's nothing wrong with the loan, they're not going to look at it.
And I know in the original, I was going to say in the original legislation, the legislation is clear that the intent is not to have lenders, the intent is to get the money out and not to hold the lender's feet to the fire to make sure all T's are crossed and I's are dotted.
Well, Bob, and, Katie makes an excellent point. Your restaurant business in Southern California that got a $100,000 PPP loan that is, that checked the box, it has a restaurant that has, there's nothing to worry about there. It's the business that, it's like the one I read about over the weekend where somebody got a PPP loan and, they got quite a bit of money and indicated they were going to save some employees' jobs, and when it all turned out there was only one job, the person who created the application.
Yeah, I know. By the way, Orange County, Southern California is open. I get to go out to lunch today. Katie, you're in LA County. You're still locked down,
Yeah,
right?
I'm out in LA County and we're still pretty closed. My particular city is talking about possibly opening because it's not as bad here, but we're still closed for now.
Well, you're also right on the border of Ventura
Yeah.
County, right? Is
Yeah.
Ventura County open?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay. Katie, go through that. Okay, so this interim final rule came out, dated, I guess, on Friday. Katie, why don't you go through it real quick? What happened?
Right, so there's two interim final rules. The one that I went through today in this morning's article is the one on forgiveness specifically. And the other one is on loan reviews and the review procedure. The one on forgiveness specifically says that only a portion of the loan is forgiven, or if only a portion of the loan is forgiven, or if the forgiveness request is denied, any remaining balance due on the loan must be repaid by the borrower on or before the 2-year maturity of the loan. Lance was just discussing this. It's going to be at 1%.
Lance, how, as the banker, how are you going to do that? All of a sudden, this person has, a number that they have to pay and they can't do it. So what as weed lenders, what can we do to help alleviate that situation?
No, I'm hoping for participant banks that the guarantee would be good and they would get reimbursed. But, if you've got a large PPP loan at 1% with a payback over an 18-month period of time, which is the way all of these are structured, Bob, you're probably going to end up with a default. Now, I'm very hopeful to find out that when SBA, I'm just anxious to see some more guidance, Bob, because as we all know, there's no personal guarantees, there's no collateral. You're just going to have to hope they pay you back.
Let's talk about that. Now, I'm going to have Katie go through the rest of the interim rule on May 22nd. Lance, what is the other shoes to drop? What is it that we're missing from that we still need guidance with?
Well, we need, as Katie and I were talking about earlier before we got on the show, we need the guidance on the extension of the covered period from 8 weeks to a proposed 16 weeks. And there is legislation that's been crafted that has not been voted on yet to do that. We need guidance on the percentages. I mean, the president, Senator Rubio, the Treasury Secretary, everyone agrees that the 75% on payroll rule needs to be either completely eliminated or reduced greatly to allow small businesses to do this. The other thing was there was some discussion about a longer term on the PPP loans. Now, Bob, if that occurs, that'll help. If you end up with one that's ineligible and you end up having to just receive payments extending the term, I always wonder if any of these PPP recipients actually looked at the payment on the note that they signed, because, an 18-month amortization on $400K is about $27,000 a month. So it's pretty stout. So,
yeah. And I know there's, in fact, Joseph, let's do a chart with all these different, all these proposals. My head's swimming trying to figure all this stuff out. I know a lot. Go ahead, Lance.
Well, the one other thing we're waiting on, Bob, we have gotten some guidance on what the lender has to review once the forgiveness application's out there, but we've not gotten any guidance on how the lender's going to submit that.
Yeah, we're still there. Katie, go ahead and go through your talking points. What else have you got for us?
Sure. So if we can go to the next slide. So payroll costs incurred at the end of the 8-week period but not paid until the first payroll issued outside of the 8-week period will now count as part of the payroll cost when calculating forgiveness. So that's just extending it slightly so that if there was payroll, say, paid, if the payroll is regularly paid in a different time span, this will allow for the full amount to be paid in payroll, and you don't have to worry about that. if it extends just barely past that 8 weeks. Unlike the self-employed, owner employees can count retirement plan expenses and health plan expenses in their payroll costs. They're going to use their 2019 accounts or $100,000, whichever is less. And for the forgiveness calculation, employees will have to report any employee's refusal to return to work to the state unemployment agency within 30 days of rejection. Otherwise, they will have to be considered in the forgiveness calculation.
We've talked about that. The guidance does not tell you that you need a notarized statement from the employee, just some sort of documentation.
A letter.
Yeah, can we do it? Can we take a screenshot of a text? Hey, I'm not coming back. Absolutely. Again, my interpretation of this, Lance, correct me if you think I'm wrong. Any type of documentation is fine. Is where lenders are going to get in trouble is when there's no documentation. Would you agree with that, Lance?
But I think if you have proof of the issue of an offer to come back to work and some sort of proof of the refusal to come back to work, I think it could be a print screen of a text message, Bob.
And I think you can document a phone call. Hey, I called Sally to come back, and Sally said no. Type it up as a memo, and I think that'd be fine also.
Well, the thing that I wonder if this is going to occur, and Katie and Bob, I might be out in left field, there's a $600 a week bump in unemployment from the Fed. Once they start reporting these people as refusing to go back to work, are they going to lose that? I would think so.
Well, that's now we're getting into Econ 103. I'm not going to go there.
Yeah.
Go ahead, finish up, Katie.
Okay, so the last point I had was there's a new set of safe harbors that have been put in place to protect the borrower from a reduction in forgiveness due to the employee's actions, such as if the employee was fired for cause or they voluntarily resign or request reduced hours, so that the borrower won't get in trouble with that and won't have a problem with forgiveness because of those situations.
Hey, we got a question from Ramon. It says, I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name. I don't know how it's Ramin. I don't know how to pronounce that. Ramin? Anyway, what if all the loan is used on payroll? Is that acceptable, Katie?
I believe it is. I have not seen anything that said otherwise.
That is actually the safest way to guarantee forgiveness here, regardless of the changes in the implementation. As an example, guys, my brother got a PPP loan, and I told him just spend it all on payroll, and you'll be fine.
The rule is you have to spend at least 75% right now, but if you want to pay completely, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, if 100% of your PPP loan is used on payroll, you're going to get forgiven.
Katie, I know there's so many of these stories. We're going to start having a daily segment. So Fraud Friday, Tuesday edition. Give us today's story.
So I haven't been able to look too much in depth to the situation yet, but over the weekend I saw some news that was talking about a man in Texas who applied for a $5 million PPP loan, and he applied 2 different places. The first place said no, the second place accepted it, and then of course now they're finding out that he fraudulently claims that he had 400 employees. He was the only employee in the whole thing.
Unfortunately, it's those bad apples that are going to give a black eye to the program, and that's Lance, we have a couple webinars this week. Tell us about them.
Well, the forgiveness webinar we did last week, but there's some updates to it. So I think those people who took it last week can participate. Those of you who want to sign up and jump on board, that's going to be on Wednesday. On Thursday, there were some guidelines on 1502 reporting and how to get paid your fees, your processing fees, and we're going to cover that on Thursday. I'm sorry.
Very, very good. And of course, the report we're and those are paid to go from that standpoint. I think Michael, do we have more questions? Yes. A couple more questions, and then we'll rock and roll. Tara, the question, and Lance, I know you can't answer. No, Tara says, how do we submit to the SBA for forgiveness payment?
Right now, we do not know. That's something we're waiting on. That's one. They issued 3 or 4, they issued a couple of interim final rules, and Katie and I were laughing about this. We wish they would just do one interim final rule a week that had everything in it instead of doing 2 or 3 in a day, but we do not know how to submit to SBA. Now, we have been given a little bit of guidance on what the lender must review, and we'll cover that on Wednesday.
Brett asked the question, which I question, if our PPP loan is not forgiven, will the lender refinance PPP accounts with the
That's an excellent question. That is up to your financial institution, and it's a pretty neat idea in that, hey, if the PPP loan is not forgiven, if SBA says no, the guarantee's not good, boy, flipping it into a regular loan with a personal guarantee and some collateral would be an exceptional alternative to living with the terms of the PPP loan.
Lance, would that be considered the same institution debt and we have to go through GP Citrus Heights?
Oh, he was asking if we could do an SBA loan for that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm here to tell you, I think that's a stretch. That's refinancing SBA debt. But he asked a really incredibly insightful question, Bob, because in the history of SBA loans have always been considered on reasonable terms. Would the PPP loan be considered on reasonable terms? That is an incredibly insightful question.
Yeah.
Now, the answer to the question is I don't know.
We don't want these borrowers to go into default, and that's part of SBA's mission to work it out. So, Brett, I think
I think in the new law that's being considered, Bob, there's going to be some fixes, because the last thing they want is for somebody not to be forgiven and then be saddled with a payment that they're not going to be able to make and close. That was not the objective of the program.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I agree with you. Martin is concerned, or he's confused by the FTE definition, full-time equivalents. In terms of, can you go through that, Katie or Lance, on how that is viewed by SBA in this process?
Well, there's a calculation description on the PPP forgiveness form. Basically, a full-time equivalent is somebody that works 40 hours a week.
Well, let me give you a hypothetical. Let's say that we had a 40-hour-week employee. They said, I'm going to the beach and take my extra unemployment. I'm not coming back. And I replace that person with 2 20-hour-a-week persons. Is that legitimate?
Yes, absolutely. The 220s equal 40.
Yeah, I agree. Martin, I hope that helps out. And with that, thank you all for joining us. Welcome back, and we'll talk to you all tomorrow. Thanks a lot.
See you tomorrow. Have a good day.